Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, we're okay. All right. It looked like I was having some internet problems before I got knocked off. So hopefully this will work. Okay. Welcome everyone. Be the first one probably to wish you a Chodesh Tov. Should be a Chodesh Tov, God willing, a Git Chodesh, Chodesh Shvat. I'm so excited to be able to have this opportunity to learn with all of you. Really wonderful. It's just good to see your faces. Thank you to those of you who's no pressure if your camera's off, but it is so nice to see people's faces, and I'm grateful to those of you who have your cameras on. We're going to get started because I think if you come on time, you should get to start on time. Okay, here we go. So I recently was in this course with Rabbi J.J. Schachter, and he told us that we absolutely, as speakers, we must prepare the first few lines of our shiurim, of our talks, of our speeches. And he was telling us how he always tells his rabbis, you have to be prepared, your first few lines. So I was trying to be a good student, and I prepared the first few lines, I would say, and I was going to share with all of you the struggles that I am having, that I imagine I am not alone in. And I prepared a few sentences. I wrote them out just like Rabbi Schachter told us to do. And then my phone started blowing up about what happened at the Shar. So I know that there are some people here that are not Montreal people. So I am just going to sort of give a 30-second news roundup, which is that unfortunately, a couple of hours ago, one of probably the most iconic Jewish symbols in Montreal, the Shara Shamayim Synagogue, which was made famous by Leonard Cohen and many other greats, and is a beloved place to many of us, not just because it is a Beit Knesset, but because many people have made their weddings there and other smachot. It is a place that we all very much feel connected to, whether it's our technical shul or not. And an individual there went sometime this afternoon and sprayed swastikas on many of the doors of the shul. Obviously something very shocking, something very, very upsetting. And as many people are, I think, are sort of processing this, we're thinking like, but I haven't even processed what's happened for the last 10 months. So could the world just stop, please? Could we just put a moratorium on all other bad things? Because we're already dealing with enough. At least that's how I feel. I imagine I'm not alone in that. So of course we are sending our love and our support and our just heartfelt strength to our colleagues and our friends and our family who are members at the Shar, who live in the Westmount area. Thank God the person was arrested right away. It appears he was acting alone. But for all of us, this is something that just this hits us all probably very deeply, but maybe in different ways. But I think it hits everyone. It's a shock. So back to what I was going to start with, which is I have really been struggling, and I imagine I'm not alone. But even if I am, I'm going to be brave enough to be able to say that this is really hard. And what I am fascinated by is that in the last few weeks, it started only about a few weeks ago, but in the last few weeks, I have found myself completely and totally subsumed with jealousy. And I have other problems. I'm not a particularly jealous person, but I have found myself, the only way I could think to describe it is like 10 commandment level jealousy, like Aseret HaDibrot level jealousy. And it's making me crazy because all I want is to be so happy. And I am happy for my friends and certainly for my family, of course, who are posting pictures of themselves getting the COVID vaccine. It is like the most wonderful and most painful thing to see. And I am hearting each and every picture that I see and cheering and putting my hands up and clapping and all of those things because I am genuinely so happy for people. But I'm also finding myself grappling with an amount of jealousy that I am not comfortable with. This is not a comfortable place to be. If we layer that on top of just the overall exhaustion and frustration, the loneliness of just feeling like I miss people. I miss connection. When they closed the shuls earlier in the week, last week already, before Shabbos, I was so shocked that my reaction was like, well, whatever. That's so disturbing, because to close the Batei Knesset, to close the synagogues, to close all the places of worship in a place, for those of you not in Montreal, so there are no prayers happening anywhere in the city at the moment, certainly no public ones. I hope there are lots of prayers happening all over the city, but no public ones. That should have been a very difficult thing, but I haven't been to shul in so many months, and so we kind of get used to things. We get used to the difficult, unfortunately. So with all of these frustrations, with all of this feeling of isolation and loneliness and jealousy and a good dose of hopelessness and a little bit of helplessness, I felt like, oh my gosh, this is reminding me of something I saw. And I quickly went through my old podcasts, like the ones that I've listened to, and I came across the one that had jogged my memory, and that was a podcast from Brene Brown. So I don't know if people have heard of her, but if you have, so you know what I'm talking about, and if you have not, I'll just tell you, check it out. But listen on AirPods or earbuds or something if you have children around, because she talks like an adult, shall we say. She has a lot of insightful things to say. So I remembered her saying this phrase, and I couldn't remember from when, and I couldn't remember the exact words, but I scrolled through and I found it. And this is the start of the podcast. We have collectively hit weary. And I thought, yes, that's how I feel. And then I looked and I saw that was from March 27th, 2020. It was almost 10 months ago. And if we had hit collectively weary at the end of March, where are we now? Where are we now? This week in our Tehillim class on Monday, we studied Parak Samachet, chapter 68. And within that parak, we spoke mostly about the theme that we had seen as we went through the different psukim, a theme of humility, a humility in how we are meant to treat people in our behavior, a humility in our Torah learning and our Torah leadership, and in our leaders, the humility that we look for in our leaders. And I mentioned that my heart is heavy, even heavier, because of the loss of our very beloved Rabbi Yehuda Kalamer, Zichrono Livracha, a tzaddik that I had the great privilege of getting to know. So we spoke quite a bit about him on Monday. And I mentioned the pasuk in Parak Samachet that got me sort of in this rabbit hole of this parak of Tehillim, which is otherwise a very difficult parak of Tehillim to study. But this one pasuk that I had come across there had slowly but surely become a bit of a mantra for me. And so I touched on it, the idea of, and now I'm going to share my screen with you because I almost forgot to do that. The idea of, let me just do this one. Wait, I want to do this, right? Okay, perfect. The idea of, here we go. Baruch Hashem Yom Yom. The idea of Baruch Hashem, blessing Hashem every single day. And we touched on it. We mentioned a couple of ideas. I will mention them again tonight. And then it was either later that day or the next day, I had an opportunity to speak with Sari Newman, and we had a brief conversation. I think we were actually on FaceTime, and she said, Rifki, Baruch Hashem Yom Yom, my father always said that. And then she had to run. And so the call ended. And I thought to myself, oh, thank you, Hashem. Really, Baruch Hashem Yom Yom. Why? Because I had been trying to think of a title, a topic, something for this class for Rosh Chodesh Shvat for weeks. Like basically since Rosh Chodesh Tevet. I've been trying to think about what was going to be meaningful for me, for all of us. And I've just been super uninspired, like I said, weary, and I could not think of anything. And then when that pasuk struck home with Sari, so I knew that this is what we needed to talk about. So I just want to introduce what we are speaking about this evening, what we are learning together this evening, that the shir has been sponsored by Sari Newman and her family in memory of her beloved father on the occasion of his first yahrzeit, Elazar Gedalia ben Yechiel, Lou Stern, Zichrono Livracha, who was just a beloved member of the Montreal community, and someone who I have very distinct memories of his funeral, which was exactly a year ago, and such vivid memories of the portrait that people painted at that funeral of a man who I didn't have the good fortune to know, whose family I have gotten to know, but I didn't have the good fortune to know Mr. Stern. And yet they painted such a beautiful picture of a man, a real Renaissance man, a man whose presence filled the room, a man who loved the Torah, who honored the Torah, and really who lived Torah values, in particular in the way that he raised his family, the way he spent his time, and in the fact that he was a man who appreciated all the good things in life, and who really was the epitome of the pasuk Kabed et Hashem mehonecha, the pasuk in Mishlei that encourages us to honor the Torah with all of the resources that Hashem has given us. And he was somebody who used his resources, his talents, his skills to honor Hashem and to live a wonderful life. So I'm very privileged and feel very honored to be able to learn some Torah tonight in his memory. And thank you to Sari and the whole Stern extended family for being a part of this year tonight. Okay, so the pasuk Baruch Hashem Yom Yom Ya'amos Lanu Ha'el Yeshuateinu Salah. A verse that many of us have heard this initial phrase of Baruch Hashem Yom Yom, thank God every day. We might not be as familiar with the rest of it, but it turns out this pasuk does not just appear in this chapter of Tehillim. It also is brought as a proof several times throughout the Talmud. So I found 4 of them. We're going to look at 3, and there may be more, but these were the ones that I found. And what I found, I hope you'll find it as fascinating as I did, because anytime I see that our sages, that Chazal, that David HaMelech, who was obviously many years before the sages came around, when I see that what they saw is the same thing that is being proposed by today's psychologists and mental health experts and the gurus of today, there is just something that I find not just comforting but also very inspiring about that. So let's learn some of these Gemaras together. Okay. The first one is in Masachet Sukkah, in Daf Mem Vav, and the Gemara says, I'm right here in case you want to follow along. Tanu Rabbanan, Hayu lefanav mitzvot harbe. Omer Baruch Asher Kiddeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al hamitzvot. The sages teach that if a person has in front of them many mitzvot, they should say one bracha on all those mitzvot. So you start off with the regular and end with Asher Kiddeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al hamitzvot. You should just lump them all together. Rashi on the Gemara here says, what's an example of this? Well, let's say it's Sukkot morning and a person has to go sit in the sukkah and shake their lulav and put on their talis and put on their tefillin. So they've got 4 mitzvos that are applying right this minute. This opinion in the Gemara says, you have so many mitzvos, why should you make so many brachas? So you just make one bracha on all of them. But Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, mevarech al kol achat v'achat bifnei atzma. Actually, you don't do that, right? You don't lump together all of the mitzvot and just make one bracha. What you do is you make a separate bracha on each one of the mitzvot. So a separate one on the lulav and a separate one on the sukkah, etc. My taima de Rabbi Yehuda, the Gemara asks, what's the reasoning behind Rabbi Yehuda's opinion? Dichtiv, because it says, he quotes a pasuk, Baruch Hashem Yom Yom, our pasuk. What is the reasoning for why we should make a separate bracha on each mitzvah? Because of this pasuk. And then the Gemara asks, V'chi bayom mevarchinoto ubalayla ein mevarchinoto? Is this pasuk teaching us that we only make brachot during the day and we don't say brachot at night? No, that's not what it's teaching us. Ella, rather, balomar lecha, it's coming to teach you, b'chol yom v'yom, tein lo me'ein berchotav. Rather, each and every day gets its own blessings. Hachanami, so too here, b'chol davar v'davar, tein lo me'ein berchosav. So just like each and every day gets its own brachot, and we'll explain what that means in a minute, so too each and every opportunity, each and every davar here, davar mitzvah, each and every mitzvah opportunity, so too it gets its own bracha. So what we learn from this Gemara really are two ideas. Number one, the first principle is that in the way that we keep our Shabbos and the way we keep our Chagim, our Yom Tovim, is that each and every one gets its own type of tefillah. So this is actually a critical concept in how we put together the machzor, the siddur, that what I say today is not what I'm the same tefillah that I'm going to say tomorrow. And that's not just because today is Wednesday and tomorrow is Thursday, but tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh. So tomorrow gets its own tefillah. And that's going to be different from the davening on Shabbos, which will be different from the davening on Purim and on Pesach, etc. So this is where that one of the sources for that principle. The Gemara is also teaching us that when it comes to mitzvot, there is a value in not lumping them together, but acknowledging each one separately by saying a separate bracha on each. Okay, so we learned two things from that Gemara. We move on here to the second Gemara, the Gemara in Brachot. And here we have Rabbi Yehuda again. He appears an awful lot in the Gemara. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says, Bore mine deshaim. Okay, I didn't give you the background, but what he is basically saying is, he has an opinion that if a person is about to eat herbs, or let's say leaves of spinach or something like that, something that grows in the ground, they don't say Bore peri ha'adama, like we would say on a cucumber or a tomato. We say, I don't eat tomatoes. I think we say hadama tomatoes, on carrots for sure. So he doesn't think you say Borei Pri Adama on leaves of spinach or on herbs that come from the ground. They should get their own bracha, which is Borei Mine Deshaim. Desha is a word like for grass, like things that like nothing as substantial as a plant, but something that's smaller than that, like leafy, greeny kinds of things. Amar Rabbi Zera, v'itema Rabbi Chinina bar Papa. Okay, so Rabbi Zera, or maybe it was Rabbi Chinina bar Papa, says the following: Ein halacha ka Rabbi Yehuda. We don't paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. He's not right. The Amar Rabbi Zera, and Rabbi Zera says, or maybe it was Rabbi Chinina bar Papa says, my time de Rabbi Yehuda. What is the reasoning behind, what is the rationale behind what Rabbi Yehuda says, behind his opinion that you should make this hyper-specific bracha on this certain type of vegetation, of greens? Amar Kra Baruch Hashem Yom Yom. And again, quotes our pasuk from before. And not only does it quote the pasuk, it brings the entire thing. We only make brachot during the day. No, that's not what it's coming to teach us. It's coming to tell you, kol yom vayom, every single day, tein lo me'ein berchotav, as we saw before. Each and every day gets its own brachot, it gets its own tefillot. Shabbos davening is not the same as Sunday davening. Yom Tov is not the same as Rosh Chodesh. There's each special day gets its own special tefillah. Hachanami, so too here, kol min umin tein lo me'ein berchotav. So too, each and every species of food also should get its own bracha. So the bracha that I say on a carrot is not the same bracha that I should say on the basil in my pesto, because even though they both came from the ground, but if I could get more specific, then I should. So what's fascinating here is, first of all, we see this is Rabbi Yehuda, as we would say, Rabbi Yehuda l'shitaso. This is Rabbi Yehuda, this is like classic Rabbi Yehuda, that he clearly values getting down to the nitty gritty, like as specific as you can get. That's how specific you should get. And it applies to your davening during the day. And it applies to when you're saying bracha on a mitzvah. And it applies when you're saying a bracha on the food. And what's really interesting, I think, about this Gemara is that we don't paskin like Rabbi Yehuda here. But the Gemara still spends time telling us what the rationale is behind his argument, right? Why is it necessary to bring this? First of all, it's in another place in the Gemara. And second of all, if we don't paskin like him, we all know that if we're eating, baby spinach, that we say Borei Pri Adama. We don't say Borei Mine Deshaim. So why is the Gemara bringing this whole discussion? It doesn't seem necessary. So I would suggest that it's specifically because Rabbi Yehuda's principle is so valuable. So even if it doesn't rise to the level of halacha when it comes to the way that we say brachot on our food, we don't get so hyper specific about the brachot that we make on our food, but we should get so hyper specific or super specific, detailed about the way that we notice things, about the way that we take in our surroundings. And we see it when it comes to the brachot that we make or the davening that we do on specific days. It's true when it comes to saying brachot on mitzvot. And I would argue that it's just true in life, right? It's just true that the more detailed we get, so the more grateful we will become. One of the things you'll notice if you're like me and you click on every article that gets sent to you or posted on social media about how to make your way through this crazy pandemic or how to find joy or happiness or whatever. I'm a sucker for all of that stuff. I've read the books and then I read the articles and then the books again and all of that. So I noticed something fascinating. I noticed it from Brene Brown, but from all of the people who write these articles. And that is, they don't ever tell you that the key to happiness or the key to joy or the key to making it through this crazy pandemic, they don't ever say, be grateful. They say, practice gratitude. It's a subtle difference, but it's a big difference because being grateful, saying Baruch Hashem, BH, right? Some of us are very conscious of trying to do that, of acknowledging that everything we have is a gift. But, we're just used to writing BH or saying Baruch Hashem or saying thank God. And it doesn't always necessarily come with the recognition and the acknowledgement of what that actually means. Practicing gratitude means that I'm not just being grateful and saying Baruch Hashem. It means I'm learning how to be grateful, and that requires practice, right? If you read all of these articles, they're based on research, on legitimate research, not just on a hunch, but they're based on research, which is certainly supported by these gemaras that we have just learned. That if a person gets very specific, the suggestion is to take 2 minutes either at the beginning of the day or at the end of the day or at any point during the day and write down 3 things that we are grateful for. You write it on the notes in your phone, you write it on a piece of paper. You can buy a very expensive journal. You don't have to buy an expensive journal, but it's more than just thinking it. It's either saying it out loud or writing it down, that the impact, which they have researched, is significant on improving a person's quality of life, person's ability to experience joy. And this is true the more specific we get. So for example, we don't just say, but Baruch Hashem, we're grateful for our health. It's true. But what we really, practicing gratitude actually means, I'm grateful that when I opened my eyes this morning, that, that little infection that I had was gone. Or when I made my coffee this morning, I was able to smell how delicious it was. Right? Or, that ache or pain I had is gone. Or that, the heat in my house is working, the Wi-Fi is working. This is not a small thing. This is a big thing. This is not a detail. Working Wi-Fi is a big deal. But that is what it means to practice gratitude, to notice, to get as specific as possible. And that is the lesson of Baruch Hashem Yom Yom. That's the lesson of this pasuk from Sefer Tehillim, or we'll say it's some of the lessons from this pasuk in Sefer Tehillim. Okay, so now that we've seen those 2 gemaras, I would like to point out to you a third one, which is really an amazing gemara. It might be well known to some of you, but the idea was familiar, but I don't think I'd ever seen this gemara inside before. So the gemara tells us, I'll put the cursor there so you could follow along. Tanya, right? It was brought in a brayta. Amru alav al Shammai hazakin. What did they say about Shammai, the famous Beit Shammai? What did they say about Shammai? Kol yamav haya ochel lakavod Shabbos. Every day, whatever he took in, whatever food he ate, it was always lakavod Shabbos. Always. Everything he ate was in honor of Shabbos. How did he pull this off? How did he manage? Matzah behemanaeh, when he would find a beautiful or pleasant, we'll call it pleasant, animal, when he found an appealing animal that would make a great dish for Shabbos. Sorry. When he would find something that looked like it would be a perfect Shabbos treat, Omer Zula Shabbos, he would say, this I'm buying and I'm putting it aside for Shabbos, right? It's only Sunday or it's only Monday, but I'm putting this aside for Shabbos. And then when he went to the market the next day, If matzah acheret na'ahemena, if he found something that was nicer or better or more exciting for Shabbos than what he had found the day before, meiniach et hashniya, he would put away or put to the side the second one, and he would eat the first one, meaning he would take the newer one that he found that was more appealing, more exciting, more wonderful. He would put that one aside for Shabbos and eat the first one. And therefore, everything he ate over the course of the week was lekavod Shabbos, right? Because every time he ate something, it was because he had found something that was more special for Shabbos. Beautiful. Aval Hillel Hazaken, but Hillel, right, the famous leader of the other approach to Torah learning at this time, Mida Acheret Haisalo. He had a different approach. He had a different character trait. What was his? Shekol Ma'asav L'Shem Shamayim. All of his deeds, all of his behaviors were for the sake of heaven. Now, that's a very lofty thing to say. What does that mean? So Rashi explains here, what is L'Shem Shamayim? What does it mean that all his behaviors were for the sake of heaven? Rashi says, Boteach shetizdamen lo na'eh l'Shabbos. He was sure, he was positive, he had bitachon, that what he needed for Shabbos was going to come the next day. Shene'emar, as the Gemara says here, Baruch Hashem Yom Yom, blesses Hashem every day. So what is this telling us? This is telling us that while Shammai's practice was every single day to consider whether what he had in front of him was good enough for Shabbos or not, and if he would find something better, then he would eat the less appealing thing. So that was Shammai's approach, constantly evaluating and looking towards Shabbos. Hillel had a completely different approach. Hillel, every time that he ate something, he said, "This is good." And it wasn't from a lack of self-control, and it wasn't from a lack of kavod for Shabbos. He was just so sure that whatever he needed for Shabbos was going to show up at his house on Friday or show up at the shuk on Friday. He could eat whatever he wanted on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And this is a fascinating debate, right? A fascinating, what we call a machloket, right? That the difference in approach of how we look towards Shabbos. So this is one of the few places, I think there are 6, but I'm not sure, I didn't double check, places where the halacha goes according to Beit Shammai. We almost always paskin, we almost always decide the halacha based on the opinion of Beis Hillel. But this is one of the times where we follow the opinion of Beis Shammai. And I wonder if it's because we're not on the level of Hillel, right? Most of us, like, I eat what's in front of me because it looks good, and I have no thought about what I'm eating tomorrow. I just don't have self-control. I'm not thinking about Shabbos. It's not, I'm not making any big statements of my faith or my belief. I just eat something because it's tempting. But for Hillel, everything was l'shem shamayim, because every time he ate something, he kept saying, Baruch Hashem Yom Yom. Hashem gives me everything I need every single day. What I have today is everything I needed. Baruch Hashem Yom Yom. And I don't have to worry about what I'm going to eat on Thursday or on Friday or even on Shabbos, because Baruch Hashem Yom Yom tells me, I should say, Baruch Hashem Yom Yom Ya'amos Lanu, Hashem will provide for me every single day what I need, tells me that living a life based on that midah, this midah acheret, this unusual midah that he had, means that I never have to think about, what am I going to have enough tomorrow, right? Or is that thing going to be available when I need it? Because right now, today I have what I need. And that means tomorrow Hashem will give me what I need. And next week Hashem will give me what I need. And next month and next year, etc. So that even though we paskin that the way Beis Shammai gets ready for Shabbos is really the way we should, right? As we're filling up our carts, whether we're in person in the grocery store or online in the grocery store, we should say, ooh, if this is available, I'll get this for Shabbos. And then when we get our next delivery, if we're able to go up a step, ooh, okay, we'll save that for Shabbos and I'll eat what was delivered yesterday, right? We're supposed to do it that way. But we want to learn from the midah of Hillel. We want to learn from this character trait of this great man who understood and lived day in and day out He had all Shema'asav l'shem shamayim, right? He believed so completely that Hashem would take care of his every need. We want to try and be like Hillel. We want to learn from that mitzvah, even if the halacha doesn't go according to what he says and what he practiced. And of course, there is a massive lesson for us here in this concept of Baruch Hashem Yom Yom. This is something we mentioned in the Tehillim class on Monday. The idea that if I need something, I have it. And when I have something, that means it's what I need, is a mantra, right? It is a way of life to be able to say, Baruch Hashem Yom Yom. On this day, I have everything I need. And I don't even have to worry about what's coming down the road. I think for so many of us, for so many wise, intelligent, sensible people, we are completely paralyzed by the idea of not knowing if I'm going to be able to get something, next week or next month. Paralyzed, right? Either we're paralyzed or it makes us into hoarders. And now if you would see how many paper towels there are in my basement, if anybody anywhere needs paper towels, I am your destination, right? So we all respond differently. But the idea of, is there anything I need today that I don't have? Baruch Hashem, no. And so can that teach me that since that has been true every single day of my life, thank you Hashem, that has been true every single day of my life, why would it not be true tomorrow? Because our minds play tricks on us and we work in this very circular way, and this might happen and that might happen, and there might be a problem with the supply lines and the transportation, and things might not get over the border. Believe me, I know, because my brain works this way. So it is very easy to fall into that trap. But this mantra of Baruch Hashem Yom Yom tells me if I need it, Hashem will give it to me, and it's true on a daily basis. And I mentioned in the Tehillim Shira as well that I learned from one of my daughter's seminary teachers, Mrs. Dina Schoonmaker, the idea that this is not just true about physical things. This is not just true about vaccines. I'll just say it. It's not just true about vaccines or medications or or a hand sanitizer or Lysol wipes or any of the things that maybe are a little bit of a soft spot for us. This is true as well about our capacity for handling things. It's true about our individual kochot, our capacity for handling situations, about our character, that Hashem doesn't just provide what we need physically, materially, but he also provides the inner strength. He gives us the ability to make our way through every single day. And I can't sit here wondering, and not really wondering, just worrying and panicking about how I'm going to handle Purim this year, or Pesach this year, or any number of other things, right? I could give you a really long list. We could probably compile quite a nice list amongst all of us. I could, but Baruch Hashem Yom Yom Ya'amos Lanu tells me that when the time comes, Hashem will get me through it. In the same way that when the time comes, if I have a need, if it's toilet paper or if it's Lysol wipes or whatever it is, I will have what I need on a daily basis. I will also have the emotional, mental, spiritual strength I need to face any challenge that Hashem puts in my way, because he is Ya'amos Lanu. He will give me the challenge. Hashem Ezratenu Salah, he will also be the one who saves me. We mentioned that was an idea from Rav Hirsch. So this is the mantra of Baruch Hashem Yom Yom. Hashem, he does give us everything we need, both physically, materially, as well as spiritually, emotionally, etc. He gives us the strength that we need to get through situations, and just recognize that on a daily basis, we always have what we need. That is the mantra of Baruch Hashem Yom Yom. I want to sort of bring this idea home with an idea that I recently heard from Dr. Abraham J. Twersky. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Rabbi Dr. Twersky, he is, you could Google him. I don't have enough words to describe him, but he's phenomenal and brilliant and insightful. The thing that he is the most well known for, certainly within Orthodox circles, but also in mental health circles, is he founded I think it's called Gateways, if I'm not mistaken. He founded a rehab facility, I think in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And he has really become the go-to person, certainly in the frum community, but really in all parts of the mental health community, to consult with on issues of addiction. He looks at this pasuk that we're about to look at together in Sefer Breshit, and what he sees, like, literally took my breath away. Was just so powerful, so beautiful, and exactly what I needed. So I hope it will be meaningful to you as well. The background to this pasuk here is we're in Sefer Breshit Parak Chavtes, where the story is that Yaakov has fallen completely head over heels in love with Lavan's daughter Rachel. He wants to work for her. He is committed to marrying her, and his future father-in-law Lavan says, "Sure, no problem. Just work for me for 7 years." 7 years is a long time. 7 years, I did a little calculation. It's about 2,500 days, give or take. It's a lot of days. It's a long time, 7 years. And the pasuk says, "Vaya'avod Yaakov birachel." Yaakov works on behalf of, or in order, to get Rachel, sheva shanim, for 7 years. Vayihiyu ve'enav kiyamim achadim. And it seemed in his eyes, kiyamim achadim, like a few days. Be'ahavato ota. In his love of her, it seems like it was just a few days. Now, I don't know why I never noticed this before, but that translation makes no sense. I think that's how everyone translates it, but that doesn't make any sense, because if you love someone and you are pining away from that for them, you can't wait to live with them and be with them every minute of every day, to live together as husband and wife. Wouldn't you assume that the days would go by very slowly? Wouldn't you assume that would make the whole experience torturous? I think it would, right? I mean, that whole absence makes the heart grow fonder, all of that stuff. Okay, maybe. But on a date, like, that is an incredible amount of time. What does this pasuk mean? The translation that we're all so used to doesn't really make any sense. Rabbi Dr. Twersky points out something. He brings his wisdom from the world of recovery, the world of recovery from addiction. And what he explains is, and you'll see how beautifully this explains the pasuk, that when a person is in a state where they are facing an addiction, that one of the principles, I know that it's used in Alcoholics Anonymous, I imagine it's used in other recovery programs as well. One of the principles that they use is, I am not staying away from alcohol for the rest of my life. I am staying away from alcohol today. Today, I am not an alcoholic. I won't touch it. Just today. Only today. Because the idea that a person who has an addiction would be able to, it's beyond not realistic, that they could make a commitment for a lifetime, impossible. It's like a recipe for disaster. It's not possible. And so the approach is, the wisdom from the world of recovery is to take it one day at a time. Says Rabbi Dr. Twersky on this pasuk. You want to know what Vayiyu be'enav kiyamim achadim means for Yaakov? It's not telling us that it was easy. It's not telling us that the time went by fast. The Torah is explaining to us, it's giving us this wisdom, this pearl of how do you get through miserable times? Kiyamim achadim, one day at a time. Yaakov woke up, he looked at the calendar, he saw there were 1,647 days left to the end of his 7 years, and he said, I'm not thinking about it. I'm only thinking about today. I don't know what's going to be in 6 months from now. I don't know if Rachel's really going to wait for me. I don't know if my father-in-law is going to play a trick on me. I don't know, right? Can you imagine what must have been going on in his mind, the tricks his mind could have played on him? Says Rabbi Dr. Twersky, you want to know how Yaakov survived those 7 years? One day at a time. Yamim achadim. I have a job to do today. I have to get through the day today. Maybe sometimes it's that I have to get through this afternoon, or I just have to make it till dinner time. Then I can put my pajamas back on, right? Then I can crawl back into bed, right? I just have to make it through today. And if I try to imagine how I'm going to make it through until the end of whatever this craziness is that we are in right now, because we don't even have an end date, we're not going to function. if we let our minds take us to those places of what's going to be in February, March, April, what's going to happen with the summer, what's going to happen with the Chagim, what's going to happen, it's not realistic, it's not possible, and it's actually very, very traumatizing to begin to put ourselves in a place where we think we will know what's going to be. We know we won't be able to imagine what it's going to be like. And when we do get there, God willing, Baruch Hashem, Yom Yom Ya'amos Lanu, right? That when the day comes, Hashem guarantees that he will be there with us. He will hold our hand and he will support us. So I think with these Gemaras helping us understand this concept of Baruch Hashem Yom Yom, that Hashem gives us what we need, and that it applies not just to the way we say a bracha on a mitzvah, and not just on the way that we organize our prayers for Shabbos and for Yom Tov, right? But that it applies as well to practicing gratitude, to noticing the nitty gritty details. The more specific we get, the more grateful we will become. The more we practice, the better we will get at becoming grateful. We won't just be saying, I'm so grateful, or Baruch Hashem. We'll be living and practicing gratitude. That is Baruch Hashem Yom Yom Ya'amos Lanu. And this idea that we get from Hillel Hazaken, who helps us understand that whatever it is that we need, whatever it is that we need physically, materially, whatever it is that we need emotionally or spiritually, we will have it. On a daily basis, Hashem will support us. And of course, the wisdom from Rabbi Dr. Twersky, who tells us that one day at a time, that needs to be, if possible, our mantra, whether you want to think about Baruch Hashem Yom Yom all the time, or maybe you want to think Vayu beinav yamim achadim. Yamim achadim. Just take it one day at a time. I know for myself, this has been a little bit, right? Nothing takes away all of the anxiety or the frustration or the jealousy, right? But it does help to have a script to say to yourself before it gets completely out of control, to be able to say to ourselves, okay, Baruch Hashem Yom Yom. Thank God every single day. And again, I really want to thank Sari Newman and her family for giving us this opportunity to all learn together, to allow us to remember your father, your husbands, grandfather and great-grandfather, to many, Baruch Hashem, to a beautiful, beautiful family. I think I didn't mention before, but certainly one of the things that Mr. Stern was known for was his incredible love for his family, his devotion to his family. And so we just want you to know that we are all sitting with you and remembering the man that he was, remembering where we were a year ago and what a difficult year it has been, but our hearts are with you. And God willing, we should all be together for Simchas. We should be able to learn together in person and to recognize always that Hashem gives us everything that we need. I wish you all a wonderful evening, a Chodesh Tov. It should be, we say Shvat stands for Shen Yishma or Shen Yihiyu Bisorot Tovot, that we should have good tidings, we should have good news. Hashem should send us all good things, good health and safety and sanity, and we should all feel connected to each other, even if we are far apart. I am so grateful to all of you for taking some time away from your Netflix or whatever else you're managing to keep up with over these crazy weeks and months. But it's really a pleasure and a treat to see all of you. I wish you all a Chodesh Tov. For anyone who is interested, there are many upcoming programs at the Shul. So I encourage you to either reach out to me or to the Shul office. Shira Vasilevsky Miller is a fountain of information of all of the incredible programs. In particular, I'll call your attention to a program that is happening tomorrow morning. I believe it's at 10 o'clock. The baking program that we are having, where Yael Orzak, who is a baker and chesed lady extraordinaire, will be demonstrating for us a recipe, and we'll have an opportunity to sort of bake together without being together safely, but it should be just a fun activity for all of us. And then we're encouraging anybody who wants to donate some or all of what you bake to one of the many wonderful chasadim, kindnesses that have been arranged by Alyssa Grunstein and Yair Myers, Mercy Muffins, where they are collecting and distributing to our healthcare workers, who we know are our most beloved heroes these days, who are putting themselves out there and protecting and serving and healing the many, many, many people who need help these days. And it's just a small way for us